Before the winds howled across Kunlai's frozen peaks, before thunder cracked over the highlands, a storm brewed in the heart of the Mogu. Among them rose one who would defy the order of things, a warlord named Xuen. Ambition burned in his veins like lightning, and he turned that ambition against his own master, Wrathion, the Stormkeeper. In a brazen revolt, Xuen stole a fragment of the Keeper's divine power and crowned himself not just Emperor of the Mogu, but ruler of all who dwelled beneath the clouds. His rise was swift and merciless. Entire civilizations were crushed beneath his heel. The fledgling Jinyu Empire fell first, their waters turning red. The Hosen, ever unruly, were broken next. For those who resisted, there was death. For those who yielded, only chains. And so the land wept as Xuen's dominion spread like a storm across the land. Fearing the unstoppable tide of conquest, the Pandaren made a desperate exodus into the treacherous heights of Kunlai Summit. There, amid the snow-lashed cliffs and bitter cold, they sought the sanctuary of one who had long stood apart from the affairs of mortals, Xuen the White Tiger, august celestial of strength and courage. For a time, he offered them shelter. But the Thunder King would not be denied. Soon his armies reached the foothills of Kunlai. Yet instead of ordering an assault, Xuen made a proclamation that echoed through the valleys, a challenge. Choose the greatest warrior among you, and have him face me in one-on-one combat. Should I win, your people will submit to my rule. Should he win, I shall leave these lands in peace. The price of refusal was simple: execution. Challenge accepted, came the response, thunderous and unwavering. The voice belonged to none other than Xuen himself. The White Tiger descended from the heights, unwilling to let innocent blood stain the snows. He had watched, waited, and now he could wait no longer. What followed was a duel that shook the heavens. For 30 days and 30 nights, the two titans battled, their clash awakening the slumbering Sha with the fury of their emotions. But even divine resolve could not outlast the stolen might of the Thunder King. Wrathion emerged victorious. Xuen, bloodied but unbroken, was bound to the summit of Mount Everest, chained not only by magic, but by the weight of his failure. From his prison atop the world, he bore witness to the enslavement of the Pandaren and the Hosen. Yet through torment and silence, he endured. Where once pride ruled, now patience tempered him. In defeat, he found wisdom, and in that long silence, he waited, not for rescue, but for the spark of rebellion, the day his people would rise and remember what strength truly meant. For millennia, Xuen endured his vigil atop Mount Everest, shackled in silence. Though divine, he was powerless, forced to witness the cruel march of the Mogu Empire as it ground down the spirits of those it enslaved. Every lash, every cry, every broken life beneath the shadow of the Thunder King was a scar carved into the White Tiger's heart. He could not intervene, he could only watch. And then, finally, something changed. It began not with a war, nor with a weapon, but with a single Pandaren named Kang. He was no hero, at least not at first, but he carried an idea far more dangerous than any sword: the belief that the Mogu's dependence on slavery made them weak. Kang dared to question the Empire's foundation and sought a new kind of strength, one that didn't come from steel or chains, but from within. He taught himself to fight unarmed, redirecting the force of his enemies rather than confronting it head-on. This wisdom he shared in secret. One by one, others followed. Together they slipped away to Kunlai, vanishing into the snowbound wilderness to train, to grow, to wait. Years passed. One day, Kang climbed Mount Everest alone, seeking clarity in the stillness of the summit. What he found instead was the White Tiger. Xuen had been waiting, not in bitterness, but in quiet hope. Isolation had not broken his spirit. It had only strengthened his resolve. He welcomed Kang not with fanfare but with wisdom. "Look to the little life you can find in these heights," Xuen said, "and you will know strength." Kang turned his gaze outward and saw them. The stubborn trees that clung to the ridgelines of Kunlai, twisted by wind, hardened by sleet. Their roots clawed deep into the frozen stone. They did not tower, they endured. That was their strength. Inspired, Kang and his followers built their monastery from those trees. They did not forge swords, they carved staves. Tools of balance, instruments of purpose. Kang shaped his own and brought it to Xuen, who laid his paw upon the wood and blessed it. Kang named it Shelun, after his son, a victim of the very cruelty he had vowed to end. Kang carried Shaylun for the rest of his life. It was his walking stick, his shield, and sometimes his only defense against the blades of the Empire. But it was never the staff that made him dangerous, it was his conviction. His voice stirred the hearts of the oppressed. His vision gave them courage, and when all seemed lost, it was his will that kept them moving forward. Shaylun was with him on the day of his final stand, when Kang, a former slave, gave his life to strike down the last Mogu Emperor. With that sacrifice, the chains of an empire shattered. The revolution had found its spark, and Pandaria at last was free. On the morning of Shaohao's coronation, when the air in Kunlai Peak crackled with anticipation, Xuen dispatched a lone monk bearing a precious gift. Clad in the monastery's simple robes, the messenger carried Shaylun, an heirloom of immeasurable value. Sometime later, he arrived to give Shaohao the gift. The monk knelt before the newly crowned and by destiny's decree, final Pandaren emperor. He presented the gift with a solemn whisper of hope and loyalty. In the weeks that followed, Shaohao shed the last traces of his doubt, despair, and fear, climbing into the thin air above the world. The monastery atop Kunlai's summit had changed with the turning of seasons and the passing of empires. What had once been a hidden refuge for outcasts and dreamers had transformed into a sacred crucible. Here, the most disciplined warriors in all of Pandaria trained relentlessly, not just in combat but in philosophy and restraint. These monks stood as silent sentinels against threats like the Mantid, devoting their lives to protecting the land without seeking glory. It was to this revered place that Emperor Shaohao came, cloaked in confidence and crowned in pride. He bore the staff Shaylun, the ancient relic of the revolution, but he carried it not as a weapon or a symbol of purpose. To him, it was merely a walking stick, an ornament of power. Xuen the White Tiger watched him closely. The Celestial had seen rulers rise and fall, but something within Shaohao unsettled him. The Emperor had cleansed himself of many burdens, fear, doubt, even despair, but one remained, festering beneath his noble surface. Anger. Anger at the Burning Legion, anger that clouded wisdom, anger that made him reckless. "Why do you fight?" Xuen asked, his voice steady and calm. "To destroy demon hordes, to crush those that oppose me." Shaohao answered with fire in his voice, his words bold and unyielding. The White Tiger raised a single paw and posed a challenge, deceptively simple. "Strike a single one of these monks, and you will have command of them all." Shaohao stepped forward with Shaylun in hand. He swung with force, with speed, with determination. But it was like trying to catch smoke in the wind. The monks were too precise, too fluid. Every strike missed, every attempt failed. Frustration surged within the Emperor. His humiliation turned to fury. That fury became a storm. And in a flash of blinding emotion, a great shadow erupted from him. The Shah of Anger was born. In his wrath, Shaohao shattered Shaylun over his knee and lashed out blindly with the fury of the Shah. When the darkness faded and clarity returned, it was too late. A monk, silent, faithful, innocent, lay lifeless at his feet. The weight of that moment crushed the Emperor's pride. Xuen stood silent as Shaohao fell to his knees, broken not by defeat, but by remorse. There, amid the quiet ruin of his own doing, Shaohao let go of his final burden. "Again I ask, why do you fight?" Xuen said once more. This time the answer came not from pride, but from pain, from clarity and from love. "For the people I protect," Shaohao said softly. "For them, I would give my final breath." With those words, the Emperor was changed. He took one half of the broken staff, reborn not as a weapon of war, but as a symbol of sacrifice, and descended the mountain. Back to the Vale of Eternal Blossoms, back to his people, ready at last to fulfill the destiny he had once sought to command. In the shadow of Kunlai's towering peaks, it was Xuen the White Tiger who stood as guardian and judge to those who sought to enter the sacred Vale of Eternal Blossoms. When Anduin Ren arrived, accompanied by Xi the Harmonious and Terran Zhu, it was Xuen who welcomed them. His presence as commanding as the mountains themselves, yet as measured as a monk's breath. Xuen was no idle sentinel. Those who wished passage into the Vale did not simply walk through its gates. They had to prove themselves. Adventurers were summoned to his trials, where strength was measured not just in might but in purpose. Xuen sifted the worthy from the unworthy, ensuring that only those of true resolve would set foot within the Veil. Whether clashing in fierce combat or rising in the arena of annihilation, adventurers stood under Xuen's watchful eye, fighting not for sport, but for growth, for readiness. But peace is ever fleeting. After the untimely death of Xi the Harmonious, the Mogu returned with fury in their hearts and conquest in their wake. The Veil, once untouched and pristine, stood on the brink of desecration. In that hour, Xuen did not hesitate. He bestowed his strength upon the warriors of the Golden Lotus, empowering them to stand against the invaders and protect what remained of Pandaria's beating heart. Even as the world shifted and wars raged, Xuen endured, ever the sentinel, ever the judge, and always a protector of balance, strength, and purpose. Wrapping himself in the lingering mist of the White Tiger's temple, Wrathion strode forward alongside his champion, every footfall echoing against the columns. The air thrummed with quiet power, as though the temple itself recognized the legend that had come to call upon its patron. Pausing before the altar's heart, he lifted his voice without hesitation. "I'm looking forward to this. The White Tiger is the embodiment of strength in Pandaria." Silence answered at first, and then a growl of approval reverberated through the stone as Xuen emerged from the shadows. His fur is radiant white against the temple's walls. Wrathion bowed respectfully and continued, "Great White Tiger, hear our plea. My champion and I seek the blessing of your strength." Xuen's eyes, ancient and knowing, regarded the black dragon and his companion with a slow, appreciative nod. "Ah, the young black dragon graces my temple. The deeds of you and your champion are quickly becoming Pandaren legend." A small smile curved Wrathion's lips. "I take great pride in the company I keep." The tiger's gaze sharpened, probing the depths of the dragon's ambition. "Tell me, young prince, what is the nature of strength?" Wrathion did not flinch. "The power to crush one's foes, that is strength." Xuen tilted his head, a rumble of amusement in his throat. "You speak only in terms of one's enemies." "Well," Wrathion admitted, "certainly strength can benefit one's allies." "And how so?" the White Tiger prompted, curiosity flickering in his eyes. Wrathion's grin widened. "By using it to crush their enemies." The temple trembled with Xuen's low chuckle. "A black dragon through and through. Very well, I will give you my blessing, but also some advice." The tiger paced slowly, each step deliberate. "Strength used in service of others is twice as powerful as strength spent on one's foes. Now, my challenge, should you accept it, will test your ability to stand right in the face of danger and persevere." And with those words, the White Tiger's roar blended into the walls of the temple, marking the beginning of a trial that would demand every ounce of Wrathion and his companion's newfound might. After defeating the challenge, Xuen gives you his blessing and you continue on your journey. In the silent snows of Kun Lai, where the wind whispers through jagged peaks and ancient secrets lie buried beneath centuries of ice, the Shadowpan uncovered something extraordinary. Led by the vigilant master Juan Snowdrift, a small contingent of the Order unearthed two artifacts of immense power: the Fist of Ra-Den and the Highkeeper's Ward. These relics, once wielded by Highkeeper Ra himself, shimmered with the crackling essence of Titan-forged might. Though long forgotten by most, their legacy had not faded, and the Shadowpan knew at once the danger they posed. In the wrong hands, these weapons could unmake what generations had struggled to protect. With solemn urgency, they carried the artifacts to the Temple of the White Tiger. Xuen, wise and resolute, listened to their concerns and agreed. Such power must not fall into unworthy hands. He took the relics into his keeping, sealing them within his sanctuary, not as trophies, but as trust held in waiting. Yet Xuen did not view the relics as evil. He knew that though the Mogu had once wielded them in conquest and cruelty, these weapons were not born of darkness. They were forged by Aman'Thul, Highfather of the Titans, not to destroy, but to protect. Their corruption had come from those who misunderstood their purpose. So the White Tiger waited, not for another warlord or tyrant, but for a mortal of true heart and noble cause. One who would one day rise to claim the Fist and the Ward not out of ambition, but out of necessity. For even in a world haunted by the past, Xuen still believed in the potential of the present, and in the power of a worthy soul to bring light from even the deepest shadow. A hush fell over the Veil as the Celestials drifted into place around the freshly planted sapling, its tender roots pressing into the earth. At their side hovered the ghost of Emperor Shaohao, his translucent form glowing softly in the dawn light. Lorewalker Cho stood with scroll in hand, inked symbols of hope waiting to be renewed, while the adventurer knelt to offer a final blessing. As Yulan's emerald coils unfurled overhead, and Niu Zhao's steadfast gaze swept across the gathered circle, a current of healing energy wove through the courtyard. The tree's bark shimmered, life flowing along each nascent branch. In that moment, Shaohao's spirit turned toward the adventurer, eyes alight with quiet gratitude. Even in death, he recognized the spark of courage and compassion that had brought them here. Before the great tree, he still saw in the adventure the living proof of why they fight, the unwavering fire of hope that breathes new life into a wounded world. At the Temple of the White Tiger, where ancient winds howl through sacred halls and the echoes of forgotten trials linger in the stone, Xuen called forth a challenge. The time had come to find a mortal worthy of wielding the fist of Wrathion, a relic pulsing with the raw power of the Titans, too mighty to be claimed without proof of purpose. Word of the trial spread quickly, drawing warriors of great renown to Kunlai's heights. Among them stood the ever-curious Chen Stormstout, with his spirited niece Lily by his side, both eager to test their strength and wisdom. Alongside them came Rhaegar Earthfury, the grizzled shaman and former gladiator, as well as a mysterious Farseer of the Earthen Ring, whose connection to the elements ran as deep as the roots of the world. The battles that followed were more than mere contests of muscle. They were tests of will, of spirit, of balance. Chen's ferocity and Lily's agility proved formidable, but in the end it was Rhaegar and the Farseer who stood triumphant. With discipline and elemental harmony, they overcame the Stormstouts in honorable combat. But the final test belonged to the Farseer alone. Xuen watched in silence, his gaze steady, as the Farseer stepped forward to claim the Fist of Wrathion. This was no simple inheritance of power. It was a moment of judgment. The White Tiger saw in the Farseer not ambition but clarity, not hunger but humility. Here stood one who would not wield the fist for conquest, but as a conduit of balance and protection. And so, with solemn approval, Xuen bestowed the artifact upon the Farseer. The sacred trial complete, the storm within the fist had found its next bearer. When the shadows of the Black Empire reached once more toward the heart of Pandaria, it was the Vale of Eternal Blossoms that stood as their prize. A land of ancient beauty steeped in harmony and memory. But the old gods do not crave beauty. They seek only to twist, to corrupt, to devour. And so their madness came crashing upon the Vale like a tide of nightmares. Yet the land was not undefended. From their sacred sanctuaries, the august celestials rose, timeless guardians of spirit and balance. Xuen the White Tiger led the charge with the thunder of justice in his stride. At his side was Yulan, serene and wise, Chi-Ji ablaze with hope, and Niu Zhao, the steadfast bulwark. Together they formed a living bastion of celestial power, a divine wall against the creeping void. They did not fight for dominion or pride, they fought for Pandaria's soul. Through turbulent skies and landscapes torn by chaos, the Celestials pushed back the darkness, their light unwavering even in the face of cosmic horror. And though the battle scarred the Vale, the Black Empire was denied its prize. For so long as the Celestials stood, Pandaria would never fall without a fight. And that's going to do it for this one. Hope you did enjoy. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.